Ah yes, let's talk about that time the US Army decided to make the most advanced attack helicopter of all time because the Air Force decided to unleash full Karen energy and complain to the manager. Today we're diving into a tank crew's worst nightmare, aka the AH-64 Apache. This piece of hovering death is considered to be the world's most advanced combat helicopter with stats that would make even the most hardened of unfriendly nations blush. This pissed off attack mosquito has racked up over 500 confirmed kills during Operation Desert Storm and has a reputation so legendary that outside of the United States, 18 other nations either use the Apache or have the latest AH-64 Echo variant on order. This multi-role, yeet-focused, payload-launching, eradication, assassination, and strategic unaliving of resilient enemies device is one of the most feared assets on the modern battlefield.
You heard that? My pleasure!
Clearly, there's a lot of high praise and mystique surrounding the legendary status of the Apache, and that's because this bird is about as close to a real-life predator as you can get. This girl has claws. It's the top of the food chain, an apex predator, if you will, and she's driven by one singular purpose: to hunt and annihilate targets with terrifying efficiency. Actually, that's bullcrap. The definition of an apex predator is a predator at the top of the food chain without natural predators of its own. Apaches are easily shot down by surface-to-air missiles. Idiot. Gee. Oh man, I gotta admit, that's a good argument, but good doesn't make it correct. See? We're learning together. Words mean things, and while you're clinging to your technicalities, let me explain to you why you're missing the big picture. For example, let's talk about lions for a second. Now, everyone agrees that lions are apex predators. They are kings of their domain. But can a lion be killed? Yes, of course they can. It could be anything from a pack of hyenas, a rogue buffalo, a big ass snake, a small ass snake, hell, even jealous siblings can end Mother Nature's nope kitties. Now that said, the ability to be killed doesn't disqualify you from apex status. Hell, by that logic, we would all bend the knee to the damn near impossible to kill water bear.
You sound insane. Do you realize that?
What makes a predator apex isn't invincibility, it's dominance. It's the ability to strike fear into everything within its domain, to control the environment, and to enforce that dominance with brutal efficiency. That's exactly what the Apache does. It rules the battlefield with calculated precision, overwhelming firepower, and the unmistakable swagger of something that knows it's the king of its domain. Now yes, it's possible to bring one down if you're lucky and armed to the teeth. But while you're scrambling to figure out how to take one down, it's already locked onto you and your day is about to get a lot shorter. That's what makes it apex. Now while there's no doubt in anyone's mind that the Apache is the stuff of nightmares, the story of how this hovering homicide came into being is like a fever dream fueled by equal parts ambition, absurdity, and a splash of Air Force pettiness sprinkled in for flavor. So here's what happened. Once upon a time in the 1960s, the Army started working on something called the AH-64 Cheyenne. This was their response to the Advanced Aerial Fire Support System program, which is basically the Army's first crack at creating a dedicated attack helicopter. Well, naturally in this situation, you hand over this ambitious project to Lockheed. And if the name Lockheed doesn't sound immediately familiar to you, then I'm sure you've heard of their greatest hits to include America's ace of aces, Major Richard Bong's ride of choice, the P-38 Lightning. The cargo plane with bipolar disorder, the C-130 Hercules. The literal middle finger to physics, the SR-71 Blackbird. The original hide-and-go-seek champ of the world, the F-117 Nighthawk. And of course, the aircraft that helium-powered observation devices tell scary stories about, the F-22 Raptor. What I'm getting at is the Army wasn't playing around with the Cheyenne. It was like, when you need a new machine gun, you call John Browning. Sorry, I keep getting the two mixed up. Anyway, when you need an air supremacy smackdown, you call the dark arts practitioners at Lockheed. Now this should have been a pretty straightforward project. After all, when you combine Lockheed's maxed out Black Magic XP with the Army's bullets don't care about your feelings approach to life, you'd think that the Cheyenne was destined to dominate. But the Air Force was never gonna let that happen.
Hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
Yeah, the Air Force took one look at the Cheyenne with its propeller and low mounted wings and said, Nah, dog. That thing is way too much like an airplane. And in case you forgot, airplanes are kind of our thing. So I'm gonna need you to stop doing whatever all this is, okay? Then they pulled out the Key West Agreement, which essentially said, well, I have a copy of it right here, actually. Just bear with me one second. Close air support is for we, not for thee.
Not in my house.
Clearly, the Air Force felt some kind of way about the Cheyennes stepping on their toes. And to make sure everyone knew, they unleashed full Karen energy, demanding to speak to every manager within a 10-mile radius to get the whole project shut down. Now, to be fair, the Cheyenne wasn't perfect. It did have this tiny little issue where it would occasionally decide that gravity was optional and immediately would enter ground status. But let's be real, if the Air Force hadn't thrown such a tantrum over this whole thing, the Cheyenne project probably would have worked through its spontaneous nosedive phase. Instead, their interference drove a major nail into the Cheyenne's coffin. Now, undeterred, the Army did what the Army always does, and they found a way by working in the gray. If the Air Force didn't want the Cheyenne flying too close to their lane, then fine. The Army was going to build something else, something meaner, more agile, and just helicopter-y enough to keep the Air Force out of their business. So they re-announced the program, this time looking for basically the same thing as the Cheyenne, but with winglets they could strap bombs to instead. This is the kind of thinking that is so on brand for the Army, because this is literally no different than how the Army justified its purchase of the M107 because they wanted a lightweight anti-material rifle. When we all know that Uncle Sam just wanted an excuse to spread more 50 caliber freedom with a little more precision. Call them whatever you want, winglets, bomblets, I don't care. Either way, the Air Force wasn't thrilled about the new plan, but that didn't stop the Army. By 1972, proposals went out, and while some titans of the industry fought for the contract, only two were left standing by 1973, to include Bell and Hughes. Now, Bell gave it a good shot, but Hughes came out on top, snagging the contract in 1976. From there, Hughes rolled out a few pre-production models and started loading them up with advanced weaponry. And by 1981, the helicopter officially earned its name, the Apache, honoring the fierce Native American tribe known for their warrior spirit, a fitting name for this aerial predator. From there, production ramped up, and the first Apaches rolled off the Hughes assembly line in 1983. That said, in true capitalism fashion, Hughes was eventually merged into McDonnell Douglas, which later became part of Boeing. You know what? You can't knock the hustle. If you can't win the contract, well, might as well buy out the winners. Hell yeah, America. Now, as beloved as the Apache is now, it's crazy to think how hard it was to justify its existence in the world. Hell, this thing had more obstacles in its way than Miami PD trying to sneak into a diversity seminar with an emphasis on unity and inclusion, but I digress. Regardless, a convoluted and hilarious origin story does not a hero make. So then what exactly makes the Apache one of the most feared machines on the modern battlefield?
I thought you'd never ask.
Let's start with the basics, and fair warning up front, there is a lot to cover in this section of the video. You don't get the moniker of Angel of Death without packing all kinds of goodies.
Am I a joke to you?
Alright, fine, the Air Force still has the Angel of Death trademark firmly in their grip. But make no mistake, the Apache is an absolute monster in its own right. And what gives it its Baba Yaga status starts with the powertrain. The Apache is fitted with twin General Electric T700 turboshaft engines cranking out nearly 2,000 horsepower each. All of this power is routed to a 4-blade main rotor and a 4-blade tail rotor, giving it the agility and stability needed for the crew to conduct precision strikes. But raw power is only half of the equation. The other half is durability. This thing isn't just built to destroy, it's built to survive. We're still talking about the helicopter, right? This thing can take a serious beating. No matter how hard you pound it, nothing is going to stop it from reaching its objective.
That's what she said.
It's got a crew compartment and rotor blades tough enough to handle direct hits from 23mm rounds, and the airframe has close to 2,500 pounds of protective armor. It's also complete with a self-sealing fuel system, which means that even if it takes a hit, it can keep on flying. Now let's talk about one of the more strange configurations of the Apache, which is that tandem seating setup. Now, you've probably noticed that the pilot sits behind and above the co-pilot/gunner, which is pretty unusual when compared to most helicopters and other aircraft. Typically, what you see are side-by-side configurations for pilots in helicopters and in other fixed-wing planes. But if we look on the other extreme of aviation sex appeal, fighter jets do use tandem seating, albeit with the pilot in the front and the co-pilot or weapons officer in the back. So why then does the Apache flip the script? Well, that's because putting the pilot in the back gives them a higher vantage point, which means a better view of the battlefield. The co-pilot/gunner sitting low and in front doesn't need the same visibility because most of their targets are far beyond the human line of sight anyway. They're relying on high-tech instruments to locate targets, not their eyeballs. So while this setup might feel counterintuitive at first glance, it's actually a genius design that lets the Apache crew maximize the full potential of the helicopter's gadgetry and wizardry. In fact, some of the most iconic pieces of the Apache's aerial homicide enabling technology include the M230, the AGM-114, the Longbow FCR, the MTADS PNVS, IHADS, and many other acronyms that I'm sure do many wonderful things. Let's kick things off with the Longbow FCR, which is that funky looking dish perched on top of the main rotor. Now don't let its appearance fool you. That growth is the fire control radar, which is a millimeter wave radar system that can detect, classify, and prioritize up to 128 targets simultaneously. Look, what I'm trying to tell you is this bad boy can track more targets than you have friends on Facebook, and it can do so with a range of up to 8 kilometers away. Or for those of us who prefer freedom units, 5 miles or 87 football fields away. Look, as a former mechanical engineer, I can admit the metric system has its place, but until you've gone 2 for 2 in World Wars, staked a claim on the moon first, and made yoga pants mainstream for the masses, Imperial units still reign supreme. Now what makes the FCR truly badass is that it doesn't care what Mother Nature throws at it. Fog, smoke, liberal tears, this thing cuts through them all like it has a personal vendetta. Rain or shine, day or night, there's no hiding from it.
Did you know that I can see you?
All of this radar data is fed straight into the Apache's weapon systems, turning it from a casual observer to a bloodthirsty hunter at a moment's notice. You can run, you can try to hide, but let's be honest, if you're going that route, you're just giving Apache pilots something to combat boredom. And as if the FCR wasn't overpowered enough, the Apache also flexes its dominance with the MTADS PNVS, which is lovingly referred to as the eyes of the Apache. This bad boy is a 2-for-1 special, combining the target acquisition and designation sight and the pilot night vision sensor into one hell of a system. And yes, in case you're wondering, I'm tired of reading out the full name and/or acronym for all of these systems. Thank you for noticing. Anyway, the TADS gives the co-pilot/gunner access to high-resolution infrared and electro-optical imagery, which is perfect for spotting and targeting the enemy. Oh, and it also comes with a laser rangefinder and designator, which is crucial for guiding Hellfire missiles to their doom-filled destinations. Spoiler alert, that little feature will come very important later, so keep that in the back of your mind. Meanwhile, the PNVS hooks the pilot up with night vision capabilities, displaying a FLIR image right into their helmet. Together, the MTADS PNVS systems make the Apache feel like a monster in the closet for anyone out there playing stupid games and hoping to win a stupid prize. And if you thought for a second the Apache had run out of super fun acronyms, well, I'm happy to disappoint you much like your dad does, because the Apache is also packing the Integrated Helmet and Display Sighting System, or IHADS. This helmet-mounted display is basically a heads-up display on steroids, giving both the pilot and co-pilot/gunner critical flight and targeting information without ever needing to look down. Think Google Glass turned Skynet. But here's where things go from mildly impressive to absolutely ridiculous, because the IHADS lets the gunner aim the Apache's weapons just by looking at the target. Look, I know that by now this is pretty much commonly known information, but I'm going to say it again because I don't think enough people appreciate how truly insane this is, so listen carefully to my words.
Please tell me you speak English.
The Apache can aim just by the gunner looking at the targets. Basically, if the gunner can see it, the Apache can shoot it. And if the Apache can shoot it, well then it can make it bleed.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Make no mistake, the Apache is always pissed off, and it's got options aplenty to turn anything it don't like into tomorrow's fighting hole. And when it comes to turning enemy armor into the world's most expensive modern art, the Apache's primary weapon of choice is the 30mm M230 chain gun. This single-barrel electrically driven autocannon doesn't rely on recoil or expanding gases to operate. Instead, it uses external electrical power because that's what JMB would do if he was still around. Originally, the M230 was supposed to fire the Army's M50 20mm round, but because America looked at it and thought, I mean, that's cute, but can we make it bigger?
That's what she said.
Well, because America knows how to party, the 20mm was dipped and the 30mm round was selected. Mounted just under the forward fuselage, the Apache can carry between 300 and 1200 rounds of 30mm ammunition and spit them out at a blistering 650 rounds per minute with an effective range of up to 1500 meters. And when a minor inconvenience needs an aggressive negotiation tactic, the M789 round is the Apache's go-to choice. This hate pill is a high explosive dual purpose round with an explosive shape charge as its party trick. The way this thing works is the liner collapses into an armor-piercing jet of molten metal that can punch through 1 inch of armor up to 500 meters away. And because this wasn't terrifying enough, the shell is designed to fragment on impact, capable of taking out unprotected personnel within 5 feet of it. It's worth pointing out that this has got to be the most diplomatically correct way I've ever seen a nation describe a weapon system that is specifically designed to accidentally score a hit in the case of a miss. But as impressive as these stats are, the M230 isn't even in its final form. The M230 Lima Foxtrot is currently being tested with upgrades to include an anti-hang fire system, a delinking feeder, and a longer barrel for greater muzzle velocity. Honestly, I don't even care about all that, because all I want to know is when are we getting these for ground vehicles? Seriously, somebody give me an update on this right now. I need this to happen. And don't tell me it can't happen because it's too much gun, because if that's your argument, then may I introduce to you Exhibit A. That, ladies and gentlemen, what you're looking at right now is an M230 Lima Foxtrot being shot off the back of a Ford F-150. That's right, this is America's best-selling vehicle equipped with America's best-selling autocannon. More proof that capitalism is amazing and communism sucks. Sorry, I got sidetracked again. I've been watching way too much Fat Electrician again. Shout out to Nick, let's collab sometime. Anyway, back on topic. Now, believe it or not, sometimes 30mm isn't the right tool for the job. And in cases where targets are too far away, the Apache also carries Hydra 70 rocket pods, which it can unleash up to 76 of these 2 3/4 inch rockets up to 3 miles away. It's like having your own personal fireworks show, only with a lot more pain and aggression behind it. These are cool, but compared to what else the Apache is packing, these rockets might as well be bottle rockets. Now, what truly enables the Apache to turn the enemy's plans into insurance claims is its ability to carry up to 16 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles. This is the Apache's go-to for taking out armored vehicles and fortifications up to 5 miles away. These missiles can be guided by laser or radar, and they're designed to pierce through thick armor and deliver an explosive payload with pinpoint accuracy. You could say that the Hellfire was made for the Apache, and in some ways, it kinda was. The thing is, the Hellfire was being developed around the same time frame as the Apache. It was proving to be an uphill battle to convince the government to come off some of that sweet, sweet DoD budget, until someone had a great idea to marry the two projects together. Damn right this was a good idea, and in fact, Hellfire actually stands for Heliborne Launched Fire and Forget Missile. Honestly, they really should have named it the Don't Bother Running Missile, but then we wouldn't have that cool Hellfire acronym, so I'll allow it. Really, you could say that every successful Hellfire strike owes a debt to the Apache, which pioneered its use in combat roles. And I guess if we're being extra salty about it, the Hellfire is also indirectly a response to the Air Force's extreme pettiness and max-level care and energy. I, for one, would like to say thank you, Air Force. Because of your relentless dedication to bougie activity, the world owes you a debt of gratitude for forcing us to create the greatest death-dealing attack helicopter the world has ever seen. Never change, Air Force. Never change. Let's get one thing straight. When you see an Apache coming, your bad day is about to turn into your last day. That's because for an Apache crew, this is more than a job. It's a calling. As in, they're the ones calling the shots and fighting with the boys over which target they get to obliterate first. Now, as cool and capable as the Apache is, it hasn't been sitting pretty in hangars gathering dust. It's been out there proving itself time and again, making a select few people wish they'd picked different career paths. The Apache's first opportunity to flex came during Operation Just Cause in Panama back in 1989. The Apache logged over 240 combat hours where it got to show off its Hellfire missiles with pinpoint precision. General Carl Steiner famously said that the Apache could hit targets through windows from 4 miles away at night. Or as one pilot would put it, and I quote, "Being an Apache pilot has got to be one of the coolest jobs in the world. You're basically flying around in a Ferrari with guns, and I'm all about it."
Hell yes!
That's the kind of thinking America is missing from the next generation. Fast cars and even faster guns. It's what America was built on, so far be it from me to hinder those great traditions. That said, while our guns are fast, news must have traveled slower back then because no one told Iraq that America has rotary-powered anger translators on standby. During Operation Desert Storm, 8 Apaches guided by 4 MH-53 Pavlos demolished part of Iraq's radar network in the operation's first strike. This opened the door for attack aircraft to slip in undetected, and over the next 100 hours, over 250 Apaches went wild, destroying everything to include 250 tanks, numerous armored vehicles, and racking up over 500 confirmed kills. The Apache's operational history is nothing short of legendary, but its true superpower is its ability to keep up with the times. Like any other piece of old military equipment, the Apache has seen its fair share of proposed upgrades and variations over the years, though many of them never made it off the drawing board. Turns out it's hard to improve on a masterpiece when the OG AH-64 Alpha got so much right the first time. This is where it all began, the moment when a legend is born and begins to write its own boogeyman bedtime story. The AH-64 Alpha set the standard with its tandem armored cockpit and twin GET700 turboshaft engines. It laid the foundation for every iteration that followed, including the ill-fated AH-64 Bravo. The Bravo variant was supposed to be the next big thing after Desert Storm. It promised new rotor blades, GPS, improved navigation systems, and radios. But like many great ideas, it never saw its day in the sun, with the program getting canceled in 1992. The Bravo didn't get to play, but hey, maybe the second time's the charm. Next up was the Charlie variant, which was yet another ambitious upgrade that never left the drawing board. Instead of pushing forward with the Charlie model, the Army decided to take all those planned upgrades and roll them into what came next. The AH-64 Delta, the Apache Longbow. This variant was a huge step forward with features like a glass cockpit, advanced sensors, and the Longbow fire control radar, which is capable of tracking 128 targets and engaging 16 of them simultaneously. I know I already said all of this earlier, but as a stereotypical biased red-blooded American, I am contractually obligated to brag obnoxiously about our military any chance I get. Sorry, I don't write the rules, I just follow them with great enthusiasm. Anyway, this is the variant that truly cemented the Apache as the stuff of legend, or nightmares, depending on whose side you're on. But as always, there's no such thing as good enough. The AH-64 Foxtrot was a concept that aimed to push the Apache's capabilities even further, with a new 3,000 horsepower turboshaft engine, retractable landing gear, stub wings for additional lift, and a tail rotor for forward thrust. But instead of going this route, the Army shifted focus to the Future Vertical Lift program. That's a whole different rabbit hole for another video, but there is another Apache variant that not only didn't make it into production, but also did that thing again where the Army sees just how far they can push it before getting sent to the principal's office. The Compound Apache was the US Army's attempt to completely reimagine the platform with a larger fixed wing and a pusher propeller for additional lift and thrust. It was a fresh take on an old design that was completely new in every single way and was revolutionary for modern conflict.
Deja vu.
What did you just say?
Nothing, just had a little deja vu.
What did you see? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of familiar, I guess. Man, who are we kidding? This thing is exactly the same as the Cheyenne project. Yeah, that same one the Air Force wanted scrapped because it acted too much like an airplane. I'm not sure if something happened between now and then, like did the rules change or something and I just wasn't made aware of it? Whatever. Either way, I just love the fact that the Army was like, yeah, Air Force, I hear what you're saying, but I'm gonna do me anyway. If your airmen can get better housing, better food, and substandard living pay that you refuse to call substandard living pay, even though everyone knows that it actually is substandard living pay, well, my guys can have an airplane helicopter, so deal with it.
Damn!
Regardless of who's being more petty about the next-gen attack helicopter designs, one fact remains. The Apache's track record speaks for itself. With over 1,280 Apaches in operation, clocking in at over 5 million flight hours, 1.3 million of which, I might add, have been in combat, this armored killer has solidified its place as the backbone of the US Army's attack helicopter fleet and is a trusted asset for international forces across the world. And even though the Apache is about as dialed in as you can get, clearly Uncle Sam disagrees, because when you take everything you've learned about annihilating tanks and crank it up to 11, well, you get the latest variant, the AH-63 Echo Apache Guardian. So what makes the 64 Echo the creme de la creme of attack helicopters? Well, for starters, this isn't just another helicopter. It's a network-centric, fully integrated weapon system built to dominate highly contested and complex battle spaces. This beast boasts enhanced sensors, upgraded software, and improved weapons performance, making it lethal, survivable, and agile. In other words, it's still the apex predator of the skies. Although I'm sure the Marine Corps would disagree with their AH-1 Zulu Viper, but we'll save that debate for another video. Comment down below if you demand that I make that video a reality. All that said, with its ongoing production and continuous upgrades, the AH-64 Echo is set to remain a crucial asset for the US Army and international forces well into the future. Simply put, this bird isn't going anywhere anytime soon. It's here to dominate the battlefield for decades to come. The Apache may be an old girl at this point, and some would even go so far as to say it's obsolete in the modern battlefield, but the hard fact remains that there isn't a military around, not one that you can name, that would want to take a round to the face from one. To me, that speaks volumes to this aerial death dealer and the impact it's made across the globe.
Go! Get to the chopper!
Speaking of aerial homicide, if you enjoyed this video, then go on and check out my previous chopper videos for even more aviation shenanigans. I appreciate y'all. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, or don't. It's a free country. You can do whatever you want. CT6 out.